let's see. We've got Cassandra, League President of Babe Ruth Cal Ripken League. Gresham Barlow, Youth Baseball, Softball from Oregon. Also mom of a 12U baseball player and wife to a 12U select tournament team. Coach.
Nice.
Awesome. Rick from TC Tremors. Brian from Tallahassee Post 13. Awesome, guys.
And we're competing with the White House right now as well. It just came on.
Fantastic.
I was saying yesterday that I think you can't do it, but I would be okay with a every other day cadence.
Yeah, right.
Rather than an everyday briefing, but people want information, so I get it.
Sometimes it's been less than useful information, I guess is what I'll say. I'm not for let's just stand up there to talk for the sake of talking, but just my opinion.
All right. Got all sorts of devices. I have my
Disposal.
iPad. I have, yeah. But it's weird because on Facebook Live, it's delayed about 20 seconds. So you have to turn the volume all the way down. Yeah, otherwise it gets really confusing.
Tina just asked, are we automatically muted? Yes, Tina. All participants are going to be muted, and then we're going to do a Q&A at the end, so you guys will be able to just use the chat box to type questions. But nice to meet you, Tina. You're representing Sorcerer Kiko Stone. Rick is asking, is Carrie Riviera on this call? I don't know. Let me see. I don't think so, Rick. I don't see them in the panel or the attendees list yet. No problem, Rick.
Trying to get all these windows set up here.
Tina just said, thankfully my dog started barking. Tina, I have my door closed so that my dog does not run in during this webinar and virtual event. So I hear you on that forefront.
Good use of terminology. The virtual event.
You know it. Welcome, welcome.
All right. Well, it is already 1 minute past 6, and I'm sure we have some other competing things like the White House, like we were talking. So I guess we'll get going here, right?
Yeah, works for me.
Good plan. So thank you everyone for joining here tonight for the Triple Crown NCSA webinar. Jamie, since you officially titled this, what's the title of the virtual event that we're doing?
So we're, well, I don't even remember what the exact title, but we're going to be talking through all things baseball and softball tonight, given the recent impact, obviously, of COVID-19. But there's a lot that's come up in the last 24 hours with the NCAA vote. So I'm excited to talk all things baseball and softball. And huge shout out to Triple Crown, Allison, and Gino on the baseball side, Nelson, as you know, for having us on, and kind of giving us this platform to connect with you guys as coaches. Just really excited for the opportunity tonight.
Absolutely.
I think it was supporting your athletes through the COVID-19 pandemic.
That sounds correct. I think you nailed it.
Nailed it.
So the agenda we're going to follow tonight, our goal really for this thing is to keep it loose, keep this an open discussion, answer your questions. But we're going to cover really 4 things. And I use number 4 appropriately because we're going to round the bases. We're going to slap our way for a base hit and eventually get a little big on it and go opposite field bomb. But things we're going to talk about, what we already know. And like Jamie said, there's been so much that's come out since the D1 Council met yesterday. And what's interesting about it, and we've talked at length about this, is that, even though it did answer some questions, I think equally as much it just brought up a whole boatload of other questions
Yeah.
that information slowly been getting released throughout the day. And, we're going to cover a lot of that and take your questions and give us to think about. That's why I'm calling it the great unknown, because there's not really definitive answers. They're not definitive dates around it, but we're going to dig into that a little bit and, then talk about things that we can be doing. Right. I think that's a big thing, whether we're talking about the coaches or the athletes. Really, it's really always been the coach's place to kind of provide that direction for our athletes. And when they're constantly leaning on us and asking those questions and we don't have great answers, we have to give them some things that they can be doing and really make them actionable. And that's how we're going to step on home plate with those action items that you could be doing. And then also, the ones that you could pass along to your players. So Jamie, if you want to talk about what we already know, about what's going on with
I think before we get into some of the content and kind of the discussion points, do you want to share, Nelson, maybe a little bit about your background? Because I'm sure maybe there's some people on here that maybe don't know much about your background. So you want to maybe share a little bit about your experience at NCSA, kind of travel world, just so people know where you're coming from too?
Yeah, I'm going to start blushing and getting all nervous about that. I know you
don't like talking about yourself, so I'm sorry.
Well, I've been with NCSA for just about 7 years now. My background is obviously on the baseball side of things, where I grew up in the Chicagoland area, had the chance to stay here and play Division I baseball at UIC, University of Illinois Chicago. Go Flames. And then after that, I played 4 years of minor league baseball, before transitioning into more of the training, the coaching realm. So I spent time as a high school head coach. I've run a travel program for the past 12 years. But really my passion and the thing that I've always liked to do most is help kids find the best fit for college. And that's due in large part to the fact that growing up, nobody in my family had ever attended college, let alone play a sport at that level. So it was totally unique, totally daunting. And, I found myself becoming obsessed with that and trying to provide those opportunities for the kids that I was coaching and working with. And, found my way to NCSA. And, now more than ever, I just realized what a blessing that's been. And, I really found my right fit because it gets to combine my love for kids and sports and baseball, along with that greater calling, which is helping them get to the next level and really changing their lives. So
yeah, for sure.
That's my intro, and let's hear Jamie talk about Jamie.
I'm sure I probably run across some of you guys on the webinar tonight on the recruiting trails, but for those that maybe don't know me, I like to kind of call myself the dynamic duo with Nelson. I think we work well together, obviously on the baseball softball side, but I'm our director of softball here at NCSA. And so I've actually been with NCSA 8 years this June, which kind of seems like a lifetime, but very similar story to Nelson. I'm from Chicago, grew up in Brookfield, just outside the city, and didn't know much about the recruiting process. To be quite honest, I got really lucky in my recruiting process and was given the opportunity to play at multiple different schools, but ultimately ended up deciding on Drake University, which was a Division I school in the Missouri Valley Conference. So I had the chance to compete there for 4 years. And then like any athlete, I thought maybe I wanted to take a break after softball and thought I wanted to maybe do something in events or, go a different route. I lasted about 2 months and then found myself working at NCSA as an intern in our college relations division, and then kind of worked my way up and dealt, with some different aspects of the business. And before I took over as director of softball, I was working with our softball student athletes as a softball recruiting coach. So very similar to you, Nelson, I live and breathe, giving back to the sport that was very, very good to me for many years. And I'm super excited to say that I've been doing it for almost 8 years now. So thought maybe it'd be good to give a little bit of insight on ourselves.
Yeah, that's why you're smarter than I am, wiser. It's that extra year. You have 8 years, I have 7.
You're right.
So
you're right.
That's what you learn. You're 7.
Just kidding.
So going back to what I skipped around to earlier, let's talk about what we do know.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to touch on the recruiting restrictions that were implemented?
Yeah. So
Go
as
through
many of
that.
you guys might know already, the NCAA has put in some recent rules that are in effect until April 15th, and they're going to, assess the situation as we move forward accordingly. And we probably are going to see some more, input and things that come out. But at this moment, pretty much what's happening at the D1, D2 level, and D3 and NAI and JUCOs are kind of operating, on their own, but very similarly is we're kind of in this dead period right now. And what that means is that there's no face-to-face communication with recruits and family members. So essentially coaches aren't leaving campus. No one really is on campus right now. Most of us are pretty much quarantined on our respective states. But that does not mean that you can't have communication with coaches through emails and phone calls and text messages, social media, all of that, is permitted. It's just there's no face-to-face communication right now. So it's going to be very similar to what we consider a dead period.
Yeah, and then what came out yesterday, we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, is the decisions that were made around the eligibility and the eligibility relief. I know even after they made the announcement, it was still unclear whether that applied to just seniors or to all classes. There was a big question around junior college transfers and whether those freshman athletes that went to a four-year school or sophomore athletes, how they would be classified once they went to an NCAA or four-year school. And really what we found out is the third bullet point there is that a lot of that's going to be up to the institution, up to the college. And what have you heard from the coaches that you talked to and how they feel about that and their knee-jerk reaction to it?
I think that there's some mixed reviews, and to be totally transparent, if I were in the council's position, I don't know. I think it'd be a really tough decision, because there's a lot of factors that go into this. My heartstrings really are tugging for the athletes that lost that year of eligibility and had their seasons cut short. But there's a bigger picture here, and what we know at this point in time is that the NCAA has basically deferred everything to the individual institutions. So what that means is that they've granted all spring athletes that have participated. So that's going to be your seniors all the way through, your freshmen, another year of eligibility. But it's going to be up to the institution of whether or not they're going to have those finances to bring those athletes back. And I personally think what we're going to probably run into and what we're going to see over the next few months and, the next year and whatever it takes from there is there's going to be some institutions that just don't have the funding to bring those athletes back. And it's going to be on the athlete to make a hard decision of, whether or not they want to do a year of post grad or whether or not they want to spend another year, on tuition. So I think not only do coaches have some pretty big and tough decisions to make, I think, the athletes are in an equally tough position as well, just because I don't think that there is a lot of funding out there, to be quite honest.
And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is we spend so much time just educating that there's so much money available at different levels beyond Division One. But then if you back out of that and you look at the Division One schools, you also have to realize that there's a decent percent that aren't fully funded.
Exactly. My alma mater wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. And even if they are, like, they have to kind of claw and scratch their way to get there. And, I'll say this, and this is hitting the fast forward button a little bit, but, whatever decision that you do make, whatever school you decide to go to one day, make sure that you do what you can to give back to those places, because you'll see firsthand when you're there how hard all the support staff works and, kind of the long hours that they put in, and they're doing it to provide these opportunities. So. Exactly. Yeah, whether it is a Division One program, D2, D3, NAIA, a junior college, there's a lot that goes into it, and this is just one more thing that they're going to have to fight through. But it also could provide a lot of opportunity, I think. And
I think getting back to the point that you had made of, what are coaches saying right now, I think they're going through a mixture of emotions. I've been reaching out to a few friends and some coaches at all different division levels over the last few days, and I think some of the general feedback that we're, receiving and the general consensus is that we're all in this state of unknown. Like you've said, no one is the expert on this truly because we can't be. The decision came out 24 hours ago and no one, truly is in a position to make decisions. coaches are going to need to speak with their institutions and universities and have those tough conversations of what, they're going to be able to provide. I do know that a lot of coaches are reaching out to their 2020 grads right now that have been committed, to have that conversation and see if anything has impacted that, way. So I know coaches are being proactive, but a lot of feedback that I've received is just don't panic, stay calm. We all are going to go through tough, decisions and tough points, and those that can stay calm and stay proactive and, really weather the storm, as I would say, are really going to be in a better position, because when you guys get to college and your athletes get to college, they're going to have to deal with uncertain situations all the time. It may not be as drastic as this. I don't know that anyone was really prepared for something like this. I know I wasn't, but they're going to be tougher when they come out of this. And I think just being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel is really important to remember right now.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something there about the coaches reaching out to their 2020s. Mm-hmm. It's something I've been asked a few times now. Are coaches giving those athletes like a deadline? Like, you have to let us know by this date. What is that date? I mean, I know it's kind of fluid, but what kind of things have you heard around that?
So I haven't gotten a ton of feedback around it, to be honest with you. I know a lot of coaches that I've spoke with have really made it a point to connect with their kids that have signed their NLIs already, or really are connecting with their, maybe 2021s, that are verbal potentially, or whatever that looks like. So, there's some things to take into consideration for there, and as we look ahead, I'm sure that there's going to be some, things that are impacted by these decisions. I haven't heard too much, though, to be quite honest with you. It's probably going to take some time as coaches wrap their heads around this. It's not a thing that they can decide right away, obviously. So I think some of them are just probably trying to process what they've, heard about and what was voted on yesterday, and, are taking this week and next week and truly probably the next few months to really kind of double down and have a good action plan in place.
Yeah. And one thing that is for certain, I mean, there's no way around it. The rosters are going to be bigger, mm-hmm. right? And how they're going to manage that, I think again it is. And we have TJ hopping in. You got to go with your sisters, buddy, because I'm on the phone right now.
14 at its finest.
Yeah, here it is, and I think everybody can appreciate. I can't. I'm sorry. But I think it's an incentive for whether you're a freshman coming in or the seniors coming back. Like, you have to be hungry, right? Because this is truly like a survival of the fittest mode, and going from 25, 30 to 40 or 50 in some cases on the baseball side is gonna be a lot.
This is also a perfect time too. Like, if you're in that 2020 realm and haven't made a decision yet, or in, the 2021 realm, where maybe you don't feel like your options are where they want to be, this is a perfect time to look, junior college route, or, look different division levels. Some feedback that I got today and yesterday from some coaches was they feel like this might actually slow down the recruiting process even more a little bit, because it gives them time to work with their institutions to make their decisions. And now in return, it's giving athletes and, travel coaches and everyone else involved a little bit more time, to breathe and really, kind of step up in the recruiting process. So, yeah, I think it's detrimental, and everything, that we've gone through has been crazy, and there's been a lot of unknowns. But I think the bottom line is we have to keep positive, and we have to keep moving forward and stay the course, is really just a ton of feedback that I've been hearing lately.
Yeah, it looks like a couple questions have come in, and I just want to mention again, if anybody does have questions, whether you're on Facebook Live or in the Zoom webinar, feel free to use that chat box, that Q&A. And I think there's a question from Ray here, which we did talk about, right? About the underclassmen besides the seniors. So yeah, the way that we understand it and the way it's been presented is that all spring sport athletes will get that additional year.
Correct. And keep in mind too, D2 also granted all sports or spring sports, and the athletes that participated did grant that year of eligibility too. Right.
No, I think from everything I've heard, the only one I'm not certain about, but I believe I did see it somewhere, was the NAIA. They have that as well, correct?
I haven't seen any specific press releases from them, but I think that was where they were trending. I think they were following suit.
So let's move on. I think they're kind of one of the same. What we do know and the great unknown. But when will schools open? We spent probably too many hours last week participating in an exercise that was a little bit silly in retrospect, but going through every single college's website and looking at if they were allowing campus visits and if they're going to hold their summer camps or spring camps. And stuff's closed, like, bottom line. And I've seen everything from going along with the recommended federal social distancing, which is the end of this month, on up to, we were exchanging some message earlier, schools already making the decision to close campus the entire summer. So we just don't know, right? Like, we have no idea. It's up to them.
We were talking about it earlier, and I know, there've been some questions about summer events and camps and clinics and things. And I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but I feel like there's personally been, an uptick in camp promotion from a lot of institutions on social media recently. And I've noticed that some of the dates are a little bit later in the summer. I'm sure probably anticipating, for this to be going on a little bit longer. But I mean, getting back to the point of no one's an expert on this, right? As much as campuses would probably love to open up the institution, in 30 days, that may not be realistic. We're kind of at the mercy of everyone else making those decisions for us, and kind of having to follow suit. But I think it's a great question. I'd love to have all of the answers, but things that I've been at least seeing and investigating with different schools is they're following accordingly, what the CDC is saying, obviously what our president's saying, and trying to follow suit accordingly.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about the whole thing is that everybody's asking, and we're even titling these webinars like, what should we do now, or how to help your athletes? And as much has changed, or that has changed, really nothing has, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we can't play, we can't participate, we're not together as a team, but my recommendation for an athlete hasn't really differed. No, it hasn't changed at all. The difference is that they just need to double down on those things that they can do. The coaches that might not have been as familiar with using different technologies, probably should get on that bandwagon now, right? And start using them, because we don't have options.
Well, if you think about it too, from a college coach perspective in a spring sport like baseball and softball, is they're on the road. They're not truly out, recruiting like they would be in the fall. So while, I think it's scary to say that we're at this dead period and there's no face-to-face contact and things, the reality is, really what is probably affected most are campus visits, if there's anything that's taking place. But it's so hard for some of these campus visits to be taking place already with coaches in their seasons, and most coaches in the last few weeks would have been starting up with conference play, and that would have been their focal point. So, I agree with you. And I definitely agree of, it's on the athlete to double down and, make sure that they have their digital footprint, make sure that they're following up on emails. Phone calls is huge. I've talked with a lot of coaches. Some of them have said they've been on the phone with recruits more than ever. I know a lot of coaches are getting outside their comfort zone and using FaceTime, using Zoom, as a way. So there are ways around it, but you're right. For the typical athlete in the spring semester, not much has really changed other than the fact that they're not competing. It's not changing on the digital side of things.
That's a great point. We had a call with a bunch of 15-year-old kids. Was it yesterday, or I don't even know what day it is anymore, but whenever it was, his question was, do college coaches find the high school or the summer season more important? And our answer to him was the same as yours. Like, traditionally, they're not out this time of year just because they can't be. But the difference is now is that those coaches are having breakfast every morning with their iPad, looking at athletes, and they're sitting there and scrolling through because they have a lot of idle time and they can't go anywhere. So it's very advantageous to the spring sport athletes right now, because coaches are actually doing more recruiting than they would be. Otherwise.
You're absolutely correct. And a lot of coaches that I've gotten some pulses from, and, schools across the board, division level wise, D1 through, JUCO. And so, they've talked about how, they're using this time to be with their families, take the opportunity to, kind of unwind a little bit, as most of them haven't been given this opportunity before. But they're plugged in more than they ever have been. They're reviewing emails, reviewing video. They're active on social media. I talked with a D2 coach a few days ago and asked, what he was doing for his program, top D2 program out of Michigan. And he said, I'm taking this opportunity to update our social media page. I'm highlighting things that we did in our shortened season. I want to get the word out about my program and how great we did. And, the track record that we've had over the last few years. And, I want to be an advocate for my athletes and bring in really great recruits, so I'm not slowing down, nor should anyone else. And I thought that was such a great point that he made, that, it could almost work on the athlete side and should work on the athlete side, is you need to take this time to work on yourself, get back to the basics, get back to the fundamentals, build up that social media presence. If you haven't had a chance, to do that before, now's the time to do so, because we're all stuck inside. We're all getting stir crazy, and there's definitely things that we can be doing now, to your point.
No, and there it is. What can we be doing?
To your point right now.
Perfect segue. Yeah, perfect segue. And I can't stress this. I mean, if anybody's been on a presentation, a webinar, at an event with Jamie, with myself, with anybody, on our staff, like, you're going to hear us always talk about video. And for obvious reasons, now it's more important than ever. I mean, every kid in your program has something like this, has an iPad. It's not that complicated. And it amazes me when I can sit there and watch them put out 20 TikToks and 100 Snapchats, and, you can't get 15 swings off a tee, or a couple ground balls or anything. So, you have to, like, if there's one thing you could do as a high school coach, as a club or a travel team coach right now, like, make sure that your athletes have video out there, and make sure they have somewhere to put it, that coaches can find it. Because same thing, if they take the video and it sits on the device, it doesn't do them any good. It's like a lottery ticket in your pocket. Okay, so make sure that they have that video. And, any tips that you can give them, James, about like what they can put out video wise?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was a softball recruiting coach and worked with athletes and families for many years, I think one of the biggest hurdle that I always had in working with them was that they wanted to put out the perfect video. The reality is that there's no perfect video. And now more than ever, now that we're, mostly confined to our houses, if not, backyards and things, it's time to get creative. So, even if it's dry swings, even if it's tee work, even if it's getting outside, and doing some hand work and glove work, just putting up those little snippets and those little clips, trust me, can really go a long way. It's not like we need a full on skills video right now, because I know we're limited. It's not like we, can put together a full game video, although now's probably a perfect time for you guys to check in with your athletes. And if you guys have videoist coaches, or check in with your parents and see what type of video, perfect time to put together a highlight tape, and some clips and things from last season, or, whatever you guys have, to really seize that opportunity as well. So keep it simple. It doesn't need to be perfect. It won't ever be perfect. I will tell you that. And coaches aren't expecting perfection. It's just the point of having something up, and shortened clips can be better, have multiple videos up, like Nelson just said.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the social media part. You talked about the D2 in Michigan, right? And I'm going to take a stab at that. I won't do it online, but I think I know who you're talking about. But if you're having shorter video clips and you're getting the ball moving with that, like, the social media play is so important. And you said about more camps being promoted. Well, if a college is out there promoting their camps online, then not only are they putting stuff out, but they're also checking it. So, connect with them, like, build your network, do those things, because it's going to help you, in the long run. And, one thing I did want you to talk about was that text message that you shared earlier, and talking through is it was more of a kind of a worldview, and, a little bit deeper than just what's going on at this moment, and something I think that would be very valuable.
Yeah. Which one are you talking about in particular?
About the fundamentals and, getting back to basics.
Yeah. Let me pull it up right now, actually. One thing I wanted to say before I kind of read through what my friend had sent me is, on the social media side, I mean, when we talk about promoting yourself on social media, or promoting your teams on social media, this is actually one thing that I found really interesting in the last few weeks, is I think a lot of travel organizations have been doing a really great job lately of spotlighting their athletes, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's on the field, whether it's work that they're doing outside the classroom or not on the field. Just take this opportunity to have a social media presence. If you have given every excuse in the book before to not have time, now's the perfect time, to execute this. And then more so on the athlete side, I challenge you guys to tell your athletes that it's okay on social media to not have to just post about academics and video and recruiting and, baseball and softball. It's okay to be human. Whether it's sharing a motivational quote or whether it's sharing a funny TikTok video. I had such a rough night last night. I'm going to get off track for a hot second here, but I am not one that is dealing well with like being confined to my house. For anyone that knows me, have a lot of energy, very active. My mom works in a grocery store and is having a really hard time right now. And so I'm trying to be positive for her, and it is tough, let me tell you. But I went to bed really feeling deflated last night, and it took me a while, but I jumped on TikTok, and for like minutes, I just watched stupid TikTok videos, and I looked up at myself and I was smiling again. So just remind yourself that, like, as crazy as things are and as crazy as whatever is going on in the world right now, like, there are some awesome people out there that you can follow to stay motivated. And I encourage you guys as coaches, to empower your athletes and players to also do that. It doesn't have to be a TikTok video. It can be a simple, like I said, motivational quote or a retweet of something or a video thanking our healthcare, workers, whatever it may be. It shows that we're all human at the end of the day. So I apologize for digressing, but to your point, Nelson, like I said, have been really kind of in some heavy communication with a lot of friends and coaches over the last week or two, given everything. And my good friend really brought up some really great things when I asked what type of suggestions she would give to athletes right now or what type of feedback. And I'm going to keep her anonymous, but she coaches at a high level, D1 level in the SEC. And she was just talking a little bit about kind of taking a step back and really just kind of looking at the bigger picture. And so to kind of summarize some things that she talked about is she was saying that as coaches, they're seeing, trends, a few trends actually, in the number of injuries, and then ultimately a decline in fundamentals and proper movements. And so some things that she shared is that, for this opportunity where we're all home, and obviously don't have, access to what we would normally have as far as fundamentals, is it's this time to take yourself and get healthy at the end of the day. Whether it's taking time to heal from a nagging injury or whether it's, just focusing in on different recovery type exercises, whether it's yoga, strengthening, rehab, these are all things that you can do from your house at virtually little to no cost. She also mentioned that there's some really great yoga apps that are offering, free services and free videos and content and things through the summer, to help these student athletes and such. So I encourage you guys, to really empower your athletes to take a step back and, let them know that it's okay to take this moment to themselves. They don't have to be on their A game 24 hours a day. They're human and that's okay. But the second point that she made is that a lot of coaches feel sometimes right now athletes just feel like they have to be showcase ready and they have to be ready to go, at every second of the day. And that, a lot of them really are not willing to take a step back to go forward or take the time to break things down fundamentally. And I know I talked a lot about this earlier today, and that was just so insightful for me because as I was looking back at my, self being an athlete, I feel like I ended up getting in that mentality of being so showcase ready and always being ready to perform in front of coaches that sometimes it did take away from the opportunity that I would have, to get back to the basics or go to the batting cage that my dad and mom had for me in our backyard, and take some swings. So it's a perfect opportunity for you guys to take this time, master the little things, work on your movement patterns or athletic moves. She mentioned you don't need a lot of space to get creative and work on the little things that can make a big difference. And I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, it's so darn true. And, I think this will really like widen the gap between a lot of kids. It's funny how the world has a way of kind of self-correcting and everybody's concerned about the rosters getting too big and what the trickle-down effect is. You might actually see, at the lower level, some athletes drop off, right? Because they're not motivated in that way and they don't want to put in the extra and they need the constant.
It's a trying time for a lot of people. I mean, for those that are not self dedicated and, a self-starter, this has got to be a very challenging time for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's hard for everyone, but especially those who are so structured. Usually
sure.
they know they're going to the facility 4 or 5 nights a week and are working with a coach one-on-one. So it will be interesting to see how we come out of it. And, I think that the role that we just have to play as coaches is really just encouraging them, right? I said about that call with the 15-year-old group yesterday, and, one of the kids asked, like, are we going to get way behind because we lost this spring? And I'm like, listen, man, like, it'd be one thing if you or your team just lost this spring, but it's a level playing field. Like, the world has hit a big pause button.
Yeah.
And those that want it are going to get it, and those that don't, they're going to stay right where they're at. So so important to realize. And like we are right now, I would encourage any of the coaches out there, figure out different communication channels, right? Like Zoom has done a great job, and that's been the platform that we've utilized, both at NCSA and with some of the other teams that I work with. But there's, whether it's a group texting app, whether it's just sending out group emails for those that are more comfortable with that. Being in the know is so important when there's so much unknown.
Yeah.
Right. And we were saying about, we're competing with the White House right now, and we could do without some of that, but a country as a whole needs those constant updates. So you can only imagine what your athletes and what your families need, who they're used to hearing from you or seeing you on a regular basis. Be present. Be present during this time, however you can.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
So, talking about some action items, and we've talked about a lot of this already. We haven't put any real numbers to it, but some things that I would encourage you to do as coaches, to pass along to your players. Challenge them to just take one video a week and post it. Right. I think our traditional timelines are more quarterly or a couple times a year. But being that they can't get out there and play, if they can get a few swings, if they can get, them playing catch, if they can get just something every week and get in that cadence, I think it'd be helpful. And I don't think that's too much to ask. Do you?
Not at all.
No, it should be pretty easy.
Yeah. My thought process is, if your athletes can get on TikTok, they can spend some time, at least posting one video a week to better their recruiting opportunities, and quite frankly, get them off TikTok as well.
Well, you're the one that's on it, and it made you smile. Well, so maybe there's got to be a healthier balance between the two.
I'm not posting all of the videos. I enjoy everyone else posting, but no, all jokes aside, I don't think that is too much to ask by any means. I think, as we were in our own seasons, I think it'd be we'd be asking a lot more, of athletes as well, when it's collecting video for games or, in a lesson or whatever it may be. So I'm with you.
Sure. And then, contact 3 schools a day. Again, it seemed like it's such a small number, but when you think about, we know that most places are mandated to be indoors at least through April 30th or May 1st. Wasn't a math major, but I'm pretty certain that 30 times 3 is really close to 100.
It is. It's 90.
Yeah.
I'm not a math major either, but.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can get close to 100 schools over the next month, I mean, that's usually, again, kind of a recommended number that we use maybe in a year for them to do some outreach to. So if they could just do 3 a day and fill that time they would be at practice, or fill that time they would be on TikTok, or, just or traveling to and from school in some cases, reach out to 3 schools. I mean, the impact of that has to be huge.
Yeah, now's the perfect time for, athletes to be able to really sit down and really dive into the research component, right? I don't know how you feel, about some of your baseball players, but when I was working with some softball players, and I was just constantly getting, the excuses of, there's so much going on. And trust me, I get it. But now we have no excuse for you guys to, suggest to your athletes that now's the time to spend the work, and spend the time digging into that research and putting together quality emails. I know it's not the quantity, it's the quality at the end of the day. And so, a good friend of mine came back and said, hey, if I were an athlete right now, I'd be putting out my video and I'd be really highlighting in my emails some things that those schools and coaches were able to accomplish, the month into their season, whatever it may be. So, find a way to stand out. And I think taking that time to research and go the extra mile that maybe you haven't had the chance and time to do before could really set yourself apart from other competition too.
No doubt. No doubt. Next thing I had on here, and you could talk a little bit about this. I know you brought it up the other day, is preparing for the tests. I know that's a huge Achilles heel for some, and they're so nervous about taking it. And now, again, this huge pause button's been hit, and there's no test until.
I personally feel like students are in a really great position because they've got even more time to prepare now. I've recently seen like the ACT and SAT have come out with some really great tools and resources, most of them being free actually, that you can use, during this downtime to prepare for the tests. I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe some of the new dates that have been rolled out are more towards June, obviously. So, we've got a good 2-month window here, to really buckle down and spend some time on that. But just, hop on ACT's, Twitter page or SAT's Twitter page or College Board, and you can find some really great resources. For anyone that's on NCSA too, we have really great resources for, test prep study that are available and things. So, it's there, it's for your taking at the end of the day.
For sure. Last couple things I had on here, building your network and finding support. I think those two go really hand in hand. What I was referring to by building your network, like, yes, this is primarily focused on the recruiting aspect. So the more coaches that are in that network, the better opportunities for your players, but then also just from a player development standpoint, right? Like looking on social media, or if you see something and there's a coach that is working with players in a way that you've liked or you've come across them before, like that's the great thing about the baseball community, about the softball community, about the coaching community, is that I think for the most part, people share, right? And they're in it for the right reasons. And, again, no better time than now to do that outreach and to see what people have to offer, because you have nothing else going on.
That, and I think it's a perfect time too, as coaches, build your network, on social media again. I know we've been plugging social media a lot, but we've seen such a huge spike and an uptick as far as coaches and programs being active. They're putting out great things. Like I saw a tweet the other day about a coach saying, he wasn't sleeping on recruiting and was going to be hosting a Zoom webinar of some sort. So coaches are starting to think outside the box. I think they're just as stir crazy as we are. But they're posting some really great content too. And you might get some nuggets of information that maybe you wouldn't have normally had during the springtime, given the fact that they're predominantly on the road and don't have this downtime to really kind of spend, with us all. So I think the building the network can go both ways, both on the coach and the player side too.
Sure. And then this kind of leads into a little bit of the Q&A, that finding support. We had a question down there, like where should people post videos? We touched on social media. Obviously, YouTube's a great platform. But the one thing that I will say, one of the greatest things about NCSA is just knowing what schools are looking at the player's profile. And that's something that, on the athlete side, usually people have to pay for. When it comes to NCSA Team Edition, you get that insight whether or not they've actually invested. Okay, so it's one of those little tricks of the trade that by virtue of putting your players in there, you have a better insight as to what schools are looking. And within NCSA on the player side, they can post their video for free, right? So that's not something that we're charging or we're asking anything. They could take a URL from a YouTube video and put it right there on their profile. So Ron, that's who asked the question. That would be my advice to you on that.
Agreed.
So, yeah, so we're at the Q&A part of the evening. And Jamie, I know you had some that came in even before tonight. Yeah. So we can touch on those. We can go down the chat box here, whatever you think is best.
Yeah, so I think we can start with maybe the Q&A portion and then jump over to the chat box. I think we've answered a good chunk of probably the chat box ones and a few of these already. But Raymond asked, have we gotten any feedback on the amount of students who want to stay another year? Raymond, we haven't, with the vote obviously being just 24 hours ago. I don't know that we'll have that information for quite some time. I think this is probably a big decision that a lot of players are going to have to sit down and have not only with their coaches and, the right, head of departments, obviously at the university, but their parents. I know if I was in this position, I'd be thinking long and hard, especially at my alma mater that was a mid-major, that wasn't fully funded. If I had to come back and pay my way, I might be a little bit torn, unfortunately. I think that there's a lot that goes into this. So, long-winded answer, Raymond. No, we don't have a ton of feedback right now. I definitely think we'll probably have more through the summer, as we get into the fall season, and kind of go from there. But Justin asked a question. It's probably more on the baseball side for you, Nelson, of what percentage of D1 baseball players do you feel will reclass as a result of the recent ruling? And do you think it'll primarily be mid-tier draft prospects?
Kind of the same question, right? I think that the big difference, and we've talked about this before, between the baseball and the softball side is you have this element of professional baseball and the Major League Baseball draft. And, that happens on both ends, right? It's going to impact the juniors and seniors that were draft eligible coming out of college. But then also some of those high school guys or guys that were going to junior college that they would stay draft eligible. So it will definitely be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not sure if anybody had read into what Major League Baseball is planning on doing with the draft, but it is confirmed that it's probably going to be somewhere 5 to 10 rounds down from the traditional 40. And that players that are senior signs that are beyond those draft picks could sign for a maximum of $20,000. Okay, so definitely changes the way things have been done traditionally, but also adds in, okay, am I going to pay $20,000 to go back for another year of college, or am I going to take the $20,000 to enter professional baseball? So a lot of decisions to be made, and they still haven't clearly defined when or where or how that's going to happen. But again, I think one decision will lead to another, and people are going to have to make some tough choices.
Yeah. I know we've had some questions about, our coaches planning on attending events this summer. And I don't know what you've had, Nelson, on your end as far as feedback, but a lot of coaches that I've talked to are planning on moving forward accordingly, just like summer would be operating with summer tournaments, unless something is decided, in the next few months to come, that doesn't give them that option. But no coaches are eager to get out, be able to recruit in person. So I think that there are certainly some unknowns, but the feedback that I've gotten is that event operators are moving forward accordingly, and obviously working, alongside whoever they need to be making those moment to moment decisions, or however you want to spin it. But I know coaches are eager to get back, to recruiting, and are planning on, at least for a lot that I've talked to, being at summer tournaments as well.
Yep. And that kind of makes me think about things a little bit differently as well. If the tournament operators and the college coaches are going on with business as usual, probably a great piece of advice even for the athletes is ask them, like, if you had to go out and play tomorrow, would you be ready? Right? Because I think a lot of kids might be procrastinating or saying, oh, we have a month now, even maybe more. So I'm going to take a little bit of time, kind of sit idle for a minute. But if you treat it every day like, hey, we have to go out and play tomorrow, I think that would kind of change the way at which they approach their days.
Yeah.
So just made me think of that. And we do have a couple other questions that came in here. And one was, where can I get more info on the team thing that you spoke of? Well, at the bottom of the webinar, right there, the little banner in blue, if you go into your web browser and you type in triplecrown.ncsa.team, that'll take you to our Team Edition login page. And if you complete the information right there, we'll make sure to reach out to you and schedule a time where we could walk you through exactly how to use that tool, and help you even upload some players that you're already working with to see what they've been doing. So
perfect opportunity as coaches to take advantage of Team Edition too, like Nelson said, to kind of really see how active your athletes are on the recruiting landscape. And it'd be a great time to have those conversations if maybe there are a few that aren't as active as others, and really take this downtime, to be in a position, to Nelson's point, as the summer tournaments are rocking and rolling, be ready to go. We should be operating as if things are going according to plan, until we're told differently would be my intake and kind of outtake on it. So that's kind of where my head's with that, on that point of view. But we had a question on Nate asked, with coaching a 17-18U team, do you see the summer season is canceled? What should I do to help them get noticed outside of what you guys have talked about earlier, if anything? Could you talk a little bit on that, Nelson?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, one, give your players direction, and even if you don't know what the ultimate outcome is going to be, let them know, like, hey, here's a workout that you could be doing. Like we said in the last slide, like post some videos and send them out to college coaches. Do all the things that, again, we would normally suggest that you be doing, but just double down on it. Like, utilize that time and do even more of it, ensure that they're getting it done, because you don't have options. And I would also tell them to kind of not relax in the sense of stop doing things, but relax in being concerned or worried that they're getting behind, because again, everybody's in the same position. So they need to take action, but they don't need to really be worried, okay, well, this kid's getting the opportunity to play and I'm not, because it's simply not the case. So I think the combination of kind of not being overly nervous, but also, doing what you can is key in this time.
Yeah, Ron, I think you bring up a good point. Ron mentioned, Nelson, that he coaches a first year 14U team and assists with the 12 and second year 14s and 16s too. Nelson would be a really great resource, Ron, offline to kind of talk through, how you can kind of set some things up and tailor it, to each team, obviously, and be kind of a team leader is what I would call it. So definitely, connect with him offline. And for those that just, like I said, are looking for the transparency and what's going on with their athletes recruiting and just trying to stay a little bit more organized in some of these crazy times, it's a really great resource for you.
And I am going to put that link in the chat box as well.
Awesome. And then we'll also follow up tomorrow with a follow-up email of the recording for today, and then some additional information for anyone that maybe wasn't able to join live on what, the next steps are for NCSA's team edition. So we'll get you that info too.
Thumbs up to you, Ron.
I think there was just one more question that maybe came through about, how this might change the landscape of recruiting for the next few years. You want to maybe touch on that a little bit, Nelson?
Yeah, Ken, this is one of those great unknowns. And, we know there's going to be a huge influx of players, larger rosters next year, but, that might be, like we were talking earlier, might be balanced out by kids that are just going to fall off because of the inactivity or not being pushed. So I think worst case scenario, you're going to see a lot of challenges with roster management and, allocation of scholarship money and stuff like that. But I also think, it could level and in some cases narrow the playing field, and those kids that really want it are really hungry, the cream's going to rise to the top. So I know that's not a very specific answer, but I think it's more or less kind of what's going on here and the things that we're hearing and things we're seeing.
Yeah. I think one other question that came through, and I personally don't have the answer on this, but John asked, do you know if a JUCO player is going to be able to use their year of eligibility in an NCAA school?
That's the big debate going on today.
Yeah, so, we don't have, I haven't seen anything in the last 24 hours that's come through to probably provide a better answer on that.
Well, when the dust settled on everybody's initial reaction, that was one of the next things that was brought up. Okay, well, does a JUCO sophomore go to school next year's sophomore? And a lot of that has to do with the running clock, right? Yeah. The 4 and 5, so are they going to make that a 4 and 6 now without a medical? And that is something that I'm sure they're in communication with. And I'm pretty sure I did see somewhere that the NCAA said that all they would have to do would be to apply for that waiver Like there's a
And then be
certain waiver form
granted.
that needs to be
Yeah.
to get that granted. And then the next question is, well, are the schools going to actively provide that to the players, or do the players have to seek it out? So the one thing I'll say, this goes for everything. And Jamie and I, we were talking about this earlier today. A huge part of recruiting is relationships, right? Like you want your son or your daughter to be in the hands of the staff that you know is going to take care of them both on and off the field. And if you trust them with that in the baseball or softball sense, then you also have to trust that they're going to make the right decisions by them when it comes to all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you can't pick up the phone and talk to them about this, and you're either nervous to do it, or you don't feel comfortable, or won't get an answer, then it might not be the best fit. It might not be the right place. And maybe, you need to continue to do your research. Or for some of those that are a little bit younger, this is a great reason why you should do a lot more research and educating yourself on the front end, and building those relationships, because at the end of the day, everything's about relationships, especially when you're talking about being at school or being at a place with somebody for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Well, I think that is everything we have for questions. Any last minute remarks or anything, Nelson, on your end?
No, it was fun. Always good to talk about what's going on, and hopefully, Triple Crown's happy with the way that we represented them, because they do a great job with us. And hopefully we see you all out on the field, or online, or on social media, or in Team Edition, somewhere soon. And you can see down there at the bottom, both Jamie and my email addresses are there. So if you do have any additional questions that you want to ask offline, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get those answered for you.
Yeah. And then as a reminder, you guys will get an email tomorrow just with the recording for your own benefit, if you guys want to go through and cruise through that. And then just some additional next steps as a reminder for you to take advantage of, the next steps within CSA's Team Edition. So we'll have that in your hands tomorrow evening, and everything you guys need next. Thanks, everything. Nelson, it's been fun. I will talk to you in a little bit. And thanks, guys, for joining. Stay safe, everyone.
Have a great night.